Now, we've seen the parallels between what Putin is doing in Ukraine in 2014 and what he did in Georgia in 2008. We've all seen that parallel. But do you see the similarity to what Putin is doing in Crimea in 2014 as opposed to Saddam Hussein moving into Kuwait in 1991? Let's begin there with your Republican congressman from the Fighting 16th Congressional District. Joining us on our Turnkey.pro answer line, it's Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Good morning, Mr. Congressman. How are you, sir?
Hey, guys. What's going on? It's good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Do you see similarities? Do you think this rises to that level?
Yeah, this is a big deal. I mean, you look at Georgia, as we talked about. You know, the northern third of Georgia is still occupied. The whole purpose of that movement was for Russia, trying to put the piece of the Soviet Union back together, but slowly. Iraq crossed an international border in Kuwait. We rally an international community to fight back and kick them out of Kuwait. It's the same thing. Let's keep in mind, too, the pretense that Putin is using to move into eastern Ukraine, this is something that doesn't get discussed enough. He says that there are ethnic Russians and he has to protect them. Well, what happened is back under Stalin starved. He created a drought and starved the eastern part of Ukraine, killed a lot of Ukrainians and pushed them west, and then populated it with ethnic Russians so that he could claim a toehold in eastern Ukraine. So this is in essence like America populating Canada, and then in 50, 60 years saying that we have a right to Canada because we have a lot of Americans there. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
Now, Congressman, as a Air Force veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan, you know as well as anybody, probably better than most, that militarily our options are limited. However, you now called for a freezing of Vladimir Putin's personal assets. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do. I'm not opposed to talking about, even having naval vessels in the Black Sea as a show of force, but there is no real military option here. But Vladimir Putin, intelligence assets actually know that he has stolen a lot of money from the state and a lot from his folks, his people. And I'm sure that we know where that is. So I think with cooperation with our European allies, we need to track where Putin is keeping his assets and freeze them, and in some cases confiscate them. We also ought to talk about energy sanctions on Russia. It is the only power leverage they have in Europe, but it's a big one. And so if we can begin to have sanctions, it's going to be more painful for our European allies than us. We'll be in a good place. And then we have to think in terms of the long haul. The Russian threat, Mitt Romney was right, frankly. The Russian threat is not going away anytime soon. So what best way can we counter it? Of course, having a strong, powerful military is important. But I think be the energy competitor to Russia. So in 2020, America will be the number one energy producer in the world. Okay, well, let's talk about our exports of natural gas and sign the contracts with allies that rely on Russia to provide their gas. So
but if we freeze Putin's assets, he's going to fight back and retaliate.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't do anything, he's going to always have this fear, and we're going to have this fear that he's going to fight back and retaliate. The reality is this: Putin is cold and calculated. When we make the cost of what he's doing far greater than what he's doing, than the benefit he gains, he's going to stop. Tyrants do not stop until they are stopped. I mean, this is, I don't know if this rises to this level, but we can take a lot of lessons from 1930s Europe and seeing, Adolf Hitler just want one more thing in one more area before we realized that the guy was blood hungry and we should have stopped him earlier. And that's the situation we're in today.
Talking here with Congressman Adam Kinzinger this morning. All right, let me pose this just to chew on here for a moment. The old phrase, better the devil we know than the devil we don't know. Egypt, Libya, Syria, even Iraq and Afghanistan, at least Vladimir Putin is somewhat predictable.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's predictable in that he's going to attack his neighbors and he's going to extend the old Soviet Union and bring the Iron Curtain back. And that's, in essence, what he's trying to do is create a soft Iron Curtain. You think of, I was in Hungary recently, and they have signed a nuclear deal with Russia because Russia's going to give them billions and billions of dollars to do it. Well, the Russians aren't suddenly feeling like Santa Claus and out running around and giving its neighbors money because, they just had a good change of heart. They're doing it for influence and to reassert themselves. And so, yeah, I mean, look, Al-Qaeda is a huge challenge to the United States, one that we need to fight. China is a challenge to the United States. But the reality is there's never going to be a world free of threats. And if we react and retract from them, it's only going to get worse and worse.
Now, Secretary of State John Kerry's in Paris meeting with other military members. Is he going to make any progress there?
I hope so. I've actually been fairly impressed with what he's done and how he's been handling himself. I thought the president has had some weak statements, and I actually think the failure to enforce the green line or the red line, I guess it was a green line, in Syria has caused a lot of trouble for what we are today. But I thought Kerry's movement into Kiev showed very strong solidarity with the Ukrainian people. I think it's very clear that the United States is on the side of Ukraine in this. What's less clear is what our options are, and there's just not a ton of them.
Overall, though, do you see that this administration in particular, unlike the previous one, at least I must say that Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney, they had a strategic view of what was going on. They had a goal. They had a mission statement. Then they tried to build around them a consensus. We seem to be doing it in reverse. Is that just kind of the mindset of the White House nowadays, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, you don't have a 90-minute phone call with the president of Russia who's invading his neighbors. You have a 5-minute phone call, and it says, this is illegal. We're not going to accept it. But it goes to the president's belief that he can get anybody on the phone and convince anybody of anything. And despite his failure to do it, I think he still really believes he has that innate ability. So, yeah, it's very different. You look at the crisis in Georgia, and Georgia was not a doomsday scenario for us. Ukraine has always been the issue of, this is the doomsday scenario. It'll never happen because it's so crazy. Well, it's happening today. But in Georgia, President Bush put ships in the Black Sea. He brought the best Georgian troops were actually not in Georgia. They were in Iraq fighting alongside of us. And so we flew them back on American military planes. Russia warned us that would be seen as an act of war. They backed down when we actually did it. And when the best troops got into Georgia, though, the front lines had already collapsed.
Congressman, how do you see this ending?
Well, the good scenario would be Crimea will probably take a vote in May and make a determination of what they want to do. They will probably either choose to align with Russia loosely or be annexed by Russia. If that's that case, it's probably going to just be status quo where it is today, a bit of a standoff. And but if Putin goes into eastern Ukraine, the guy's crazy enough that we just don't know. If he goes into eastern Ukraine, this thing escalates really quickly.
We already touched on energy here. Keystone Pipeline, we'll just set that aside for the moment. Time to reintroduce that missile plan for Poland?
I think that's something I've been talking about a lot is, yes, we did this. Remember the old shameful Hillary Clinton with that big stupid reset button with the Russian counterpart? Then we brought our missile defense down and scared our allies, and we do not have a missile defense shield. This is something that's very important to Russia, and I think it ought to be back on the table.
Have you heard, this may just be a rumor, I heard this earlier this morning, that Secretary of State John Kerry is going to take our Winter Olympic medals and hurl them over the wall of the Kremlin?
I think that's a great... Okay, now I get it. That's funny.
You never mind. Forget it. I don't expect you to comment on that one.
I'd give him some credit. That'd be kind of...
I heard you give him some credit earlier. That was, I thought, somewhat well-deserved. Well, thank you, Congressman. It's always wonderful having you on the program. Continue to fight the good fight.
You bet, guys. Enjoy it. Thanks a lot.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger on our Turnkey.pro answer line.